We have Bethel, which is the house of El, which is south of Shiloh. We have evidence in the biblical text of the worship of El at Shechem. Mr. Mark mentioned it when I asked, where would you look first? He pointed rightly to Shechem. Why? We do have the evidence of the worship of El in Shechem. When we come to Judges 9, we read, and all the inhabitants of the town of Shechem heard, and they came to the forest of Beth-el Brith, the house of M, of the covenant. El Brith. Brith is a covenant. At Shechem, they were worshipping this ancient deity of the land, El. We even have the worship of Baal Berith. So we have two gods, the arguments that they may be the same, worshipped in Shechem, in ancient Canaan, according to the biblical text. If they are not the same, then we have the chief deity El and one of his sons, 70 sons, Baal, which Yud-Heh-Vav is one of them. So, at Bethel, which is south of Shiloh, this is what they're worshiping, the house of El. There's worship of El at Shechem, El Berith. And then in the Jacob cycle, we have the place Penuel, where the biblical text tells us that he gets the name change. Now look on my screen, and I will point out these places to you. Penuel. This is Shechem. So we have Penuel, where he sees Yah face to face. This is the deity they worship there. In Shechem, we have El Berith. And then we have Bethel, the house of El. Now draw a circle around this. Who do you have in the middle? Or what do you have in the middle? Look on the map carefully. Right.
Shiloh.
Shiloh. So around Shiloh, where the chief deity is El, around that cultic place, you have the worship of this chief deity all around. It's like circled in it. So clearly, the people are rallying around this deity El. They're using this deity to represent themselves. Now we come to the Sumerian ostraca, number 27. On this ostraca, there is a reference to a clan from the genealogy of Manasseh in the Bible. And on this ostraca, there is a clan named Azriel. Azriel. From Manasseh, there's a clan named Azriel. Well, where is this Azriel located? It sounds like Israel, but it's A-S-R-I and then L. Where is this Azriel located? So let's bring the map and let's bring the data that we have from the Sumerian ostraca. And you see Azriel here, right? Look at Shechem. Shechem is right there. Where is Azrael? Where is Shiloh here? Well, Shiloh is not on the screen, but Azrael is located in the area between Shechem and Shiloh. It's right stuck in the middle there. This is why in 1973, Andre Lemay proposed to equate the name Israel with Azrael of the Manasseh genealogies and Samaria Ostraka. So someone noticed it in the past and suggested that, you know what, with the data we have that I'm presenting, he's proposing to equate the name Israel with Azrael. Okay. Can I make that conclusion? I don't think so. Is he wrong? I don't think so. But I don't have enough to make that conclusion. We don't have enough to make that conclusion. What we can conclude is that Shiloh was the center of the worship of El, and it seems to be the center of the formation of the name Israel. So was Martin's note correct to suggest that before Mosaic times, the Israelite population was organized in a league of tribes whose institution functioned around the central shrine? No, he may have a point here. The issue is, this is how far we can get. We don't have the data that we want to have to actually hit the nail on the head and say this is where the name came from. What we know is that they rallied around the name El, the deity El. Shiloh was the place. Around Shiloh, we still see the worship of El all around. But then the other, is it Azrael? Is it Azra? Is it Ashta, as people have put in the chat? I don't know. And I don't think that there's any data there that would say a yes or a no. But this is how far that we come to. So at the transition from the late Bronze Age to Iron Age 1, we see Shechem kind of leave the stage. And then what we have is the entity that became Israel. But this is how far I can bring you to. But I cannot make any conclusions. Questions, contributions, additions before we close?
So, Rabbi, you brought us right to the edge and say, yo, we can't jump.
Correct.
You but we can't jump. But I got a question, though. The Azrael dude, or the bloodline that you said is referred to in the Bible in like 3 or 4 different verses, 3 or 4 different chapters. In what regards was he spoken about, or he was, you know what I mean? Like the slide after this one, not this one. After this one. You had 3 Bible verses up there.
Oh,
that the brother that I guess the historian used his bloodline and the Ostraka to make the inference that that's where the name.
Yes. What's his name? Andre Lemay. Where is it? Yeah.
It's like 2 or 3 spots. There you go.
Correct.
So in Numbers 23:31, like what?
How was Manasseh? Manasseh's genealogy.
Oh, so he wasn't spoken about as a prominent person at all in any way, shape, or form?
Nah, it was just the genealogy that I picked him up.
Oh, okay. And all right, no problem.
Right. And
But what
Manasseh
evidence?
was accused of what? He was the one that brought the distraction on the north, correct? So maybe that's why they went after him. I don't know.
But what examples would we, or what historical references would we look for to say, all right, this is where the name comes from concretely? Like, what would we need to bridge that gap so we could jump?
We don't have it.
Would you look for though?
What would I look for? Like,
Yeah. Aside from a piece of paper saying we are now going to change this name from Shechem to Israel, like what other archaeological clues or historical clues that we would look for that will enable us to make that jump?
so I'll look at the black obelisk of Shalmaneser, because after Meneptah's mention of Israel, the only archaeological data, primary evidence that we have is this one here. What's his name? Jehu bowing down. Is that Jehu, Mr. Jason? I think it is. Bowing down to Shalmaneser. This is what I would look for, like hard evidence, primary source. We don't have that.
Oh, okay.
We know Shechem. We know Meneptah mentions Israel, but why did they come to the name Israel? We know El. Okay, El is there. So we have is it a theophoric name as we call it, a name that ends with a deity, but is it Isis, Ra? I don't know. People make that statement. I doubt it is. I really doubt it is. But no, Mr. David, Mr. David, Mr. David, Mr. David. Okay, let me say this. Mr. David is taking me too deep. You remember the Greek polites that we mentioned about? What do you think? Let me give this argument. I think it's a solid one. When I said Isis, Ra, El, it joggled my mind to this. You had administrative centers in Canaan. These people would have married local women, correct? If these are Philistines, we know that the Philistines were fighting for Egypt. So they are not Egyptians. We know that the Philistines were in these forts in Canaan. Okay. They would have settled. They would have intermarried, if there's anything like that at that time, but they would have married the local women. Okay. If or when that big collapse happened, when all the empires were gone, what would those people who were actually working for Egypt, who were in these forts, what would they do?
They would take on the identity of who they used to work for, no? Or
Yes, somewhat, or they would naturalize, right? You would.
yeah, just become your own person now.
You become your own person. See, you be from the highlands, correct? You have a wife, you have children there, so you've naturalized. Could it be? Not could it be? All of these people would surely come together to form this entity, Israel, correct? At least you have these Greek hoplites who are armed. They know how to fight. They are warriors. There'll be integration. If all these people actually came together to form Israel, can one say maybe El is the chief deity of Canaan and the rest is Isis and Ra? Can somebody make that argument? Maybe, but then I would say again, sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I said I think Chauncey just did in the message.
Correct. So my my rebuttal to that would be that these guys are the Philistines or the Greeks. So would we not rather expect them to name their deities and not the ones from Egypt? So I'm not saying it's not possible, but if I'm supposed to argue against the idea of Isis, Ra, El, my argument would be, well, those Greek hoplites fighting for stations in this Egyptian forts maybe would rather refer to their deities from their homeland rather than the deities from their overlords in Egypt. I don't know, but
Rabbi,
Madam Alita.
it could have been as simple as when my people did the Great Migration up here in 1936. They all came up here from the South, and so some of them were the PEEB peoples, some of them were the PEOPLES peoples, and some of which were PEEPLES. Okay, now, depending on, some of them came from Birmingham, some of them came from all over Alabama, and they all arrived in Detroit. Let's say about 75 of them, some children, some adults. Now, they got to Detroit and decided, took a vote on what the one name that they were going to call themselves by and how they were going to spell it. Now, they took a vote, and the vote said there were too many criminals with the EEB name, so they didn't want that one, didn't want to be attached to all them criminals and outlaws and all of those wretched folks that had been in and out of penitentiary. So they voted and became the PEOPLESs. Now, there's still some PEEBLESs, but the major portion took on the PEO name, the representation. So it could have been as simple as that. When we get together, when we decided to come in, everybody came together, North and South, and these outlaws and in-laws and all of these other people we married into, and all of these women and children, they could have at some point decided, we're going to go with a name. And all of us are going to be called by the same name. We did that in 1936. And by 41, it was a done deal. Everybody was a PEO that we knew, all our relatives. But here it is. They could have done that same sort of thing when they came and they met up and they all got together and everybody had to make a decision. It could have been as simple as that. They voted and decided Azrael became Israel. You know, it's only a couple letters changed here. And we're all going to be at this point known by this name and by this place and in this at this time. And then we're all going to start together here, and then we'll go forth from here. And it was as simple as that with my people. So I'm saying, I've seen this movie before. This is a rerun. I've seen this happen. I've seen how a bunch of people, a bunch of ragtag group of folk got together and decided what they were going to do, what they were going to be, how they were going to operate. And they came up with this, and they changed their name at that point, and everybody began calling themselves the PEOPLESs then. And so I'm just saying that to kind of clear up some of the, you know, the gray area. It could have been just a simple vote. That's my 2 cents.
Awesome.
I like that. I like that. The other thought that I had, Rabbi, was that sometimes it's majority rule also. So when you bring all these people together, who are the most powerful of the group that got together? So I know early on you talked about the different tribes that came together to form Israel. So the question that I keep having is, was there a tribe of Dan? Was there a tribe of Asher? Was there all these 12 different tribes? And was this tribe of Israel the strongest, most mightiest? And so they all fell under that banner. What Ms. Drew said is true of a lot of families that migrated from the south to the north. So it rings quite true what she said. In congregations, you would see, Eastern stars developing from different places in North Carolina or Georgia. So it is true, Ms. Drew. It's true what you said. But I'm just trying to remember what Rabbi said about all of these different people coming together from different tribes and then falling under the banner of the perhaps most
Yep.
I have a suggestion.
Yes, Mr. D.
When my in-laws came, when my grandparents came over, they were called Baltimore. But when they came and they had to do the paperwork, they put Baltimore. So the people in charge actually changed the name. Now, I know Israel had different dialects or had different accents. So the writers could have decided on what they wanted to call everyone.
That's interesting. That's very interesting.
I have to agree, bruh, because I know that my grandmother calls my husband Andy, and then his grandma called him Andra, and his name is Andrew, but it is that. And now he calls himself Drew. So were there 4 different people? No. They were all calling the same person a different name from their dialect. One was in Tennessee, Nashville, and the other one was in Toledo, Ohio, and the other one. So everybody's dialect counts. What sounded like Andra to her was actually or technically written down Andrew. So we were, depending on where we were from and how it is that we spoke, and like you said, it's complete dialect, how it is that it sounded or fell on our ear and fell out of our mouths was how names got changed. And that's pretty much, that happens everywhere you go. So my son is Calvin, but when he goes to his grandma's house, he's Kevin. So it just depends on how the person hears it and how the person's tongue says it. So it could be any number or any recollection of how a thing is spoken. It isn't always as clear as it is when it's written down. The words that are written down are not necessarily what we call each other by. And how and it's not what they call you, it's what you answer to. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. And I think a lot of the things and names and especially places in the Bible have been written down by one group of people because it sounded like that to their ear. And so they spelled it phonetically like they heard it, but that is not what it actually is or was called at that appointed time. It just got moved around and just got messed around and the letters got changed around, and thereby, somebody said it earlier, they used poetic license and they did pretty much what they wanted to. But it got written down, only the intelligentsia or the people who could write. The rest of us just spoke it like we heard it. And I think that's a lot about what happened. And now, you know, the P-E-O-P-L-E-S, when I say peoples, you don't know if I said it with a B or the E-E or the E-O. You have no clue when you're listening. So oral tradition has a lot to do with what we hear, not what is actually or technically written down.
Rabbi.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So to add a different perspective to the conversation, I think we can conclude that the name Israel, or I guess in the Hebrew tongue would be pronounced Yisrael, is definitely idyllic. It's an ideological name, because we see how Jacob gets the name, and we also see that the naming has a meaning that started from some place, him prevailing. Whereas if you're listing somebody's genealogy, you're really talking about somebody just naming their child, you know? So that's kind of like, I just wanted to put that thought out there, that definitely the name Yisrael is certainly idyllic, and a group of people may adopt a name to have a much larger meaning rather than an ethnic meaning, because we clearly know that that was not Jacob's name.
Repeat the last part. What was not Jacob's name? Israel?
Right, yeah, for his birth name.
Okay.
It was definitely a quote unquote given name to represent something larger than even himself.
Correct. Yeah, so you see, now you guys let me think about things I've never considered. The transition name from Jacob to Israel, is the story in the text just an ideology trying to tell us how the name came about? Or that's Northern tradition? Because they put him at Peniel. You know, he comes from Laban.
Well, could it be like, you know how some people become Israelites and then they change their names because now they worship Yah?
Okay, yes.
I mean, I'm just saying that could be one of it. Like his name got changed. He's no longer this, but now he's a part of this. He's Israel, you know. And then he teaches everyone. So he becomes one of the fathers of Yah or El. You know, he becomes one of the founding fathers, sort of say, of this movement.
Correct.
Yeah, I'd also say that, you know, you see that pattern. They followed that pattern after Abram, right? So
Correct.
Abram becomes Abraham.
Yeah.
So it's definitely taking on a more than individualistic name, a more nationalistic name, which does not necessarily include your ethnic generations. That's kind of like what I'm trying to. So they may have rallied around a name that they all adopted. And, you know, linguistically, it would kind of all mean pretty much the same thing.